Sacred complex. The concept of sacred complex was given by L.P. Vidyarthi in his book The Sacred Complex of Hindu Gaya. So, in anthropology, we'll be discussing so many things, so many new terms like sacred complex, tribe caste continuum, universalization, parochialization, Sanskritization, westernization. So some of you all, at least students from science background would have never even heard any of these terms until now, right? So if you're some from sociology or any arts background, probably you would have heard these terms. So we tend to think like, okay, these are something very complex, it's so difficult and all. But there's nothing like that. Only when you understand the meaning of these terms in respect with each of these topics, then you will understand these are very simple things which we've been noticing in our day-to-day life. But we didn't know these specific terms. That's all. Okay. So already we have discussed a great tradition, little tradition, right? Universalization, parochialization. So today, now we will be discussing sacred complex. The concept of sacred complex was given by L.P. Vidyarthi. In his famous book, The Sacred Complex of Hindu Gaya. So, what is this sacred complex? I'm sure many of you all would have visited places of pilgrimage in India, right? Like the Tirupati Tirumala temple in Andhra Pradesh, the Kashi Vishwanath temple, Rishikesh, Kedarnath, Badrinath, Manasarovar, or even Puri Jagannath temple, and even many temples in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and many other places throughout the India. So you must have noticed that these places of pilgrimage have been visited by people through all walks of life, isn't it? Irrespective of the strata of the society which they belong to, irrespective of their education, irrespective of what positions they belong to. So you can find devotees flocking these centers of civilization throughout, and it continues again and again. So these centers of pilgrimage have been existing since several centuries, and we have belief in that, and we still visit these places. So, a sacred complex is a center of civilization where people from all walks of life, people from different cultures, people from various parts of the country, and even people from parts of the world, and people who follow great tradition, little tradition, all of these people, people from rural background, urban background, educated, uneducated, people from all sorts of possibilities. Okay, that is people from different cultures, people following different beliefs, faith, all of these people visit these places of civilization. So those places are called as sacred complex. So all these places which I gave you example right now are sacred complexes, isn't it? You can see Jagannath Puri temple, Haridwar, Rishikesh, all these are sacred complexes. So what exactly do we mean by sacred complex? So LP Vidyarthi in this book, that is The Sacred Complex of Hindu Gaya. So where is Gaya? Gaya is located presently in Bihar. Earlier it was located in the ancient zone of Magadha, right? So LP Vidyarthi studied this pilgrimage center, that is Bodh Gaya, and he described what a sacred complex means in this book. So that doesn't mean the concept of sacred complex is limited only to Bodh Gaya. It is just that LP Vidyarthi studied the concept of sacred complex in this place of Bodh Gaya in Bihar, and he gave us this concept. Okay, he gave us the concept of sacred complex. Using that, we can apply it to any pilgrimage center in our country. Okay, I hope you understood. So to explain this, LP Vidyarthi came up with three analytical terms or descriptive terms. He says that there are three analytical terms. If you understand each of these and combine all of them together, then you will understand what is the meaning of a sacred complex. Okay, so LP Vidyarthi gave us the concept of sacred complex in the book The Sacred Complex of Hindu Gaya. He said that if you have to understand what a sacred complex means, then you'll have to understand three important analytical terms or descriptive terms. When these three important analytical terms or descriptive terms are conceived collectively, then we get what is called as a sacred complex. So now let's see what are these three descriptive terms and how we can understand each one of these. Okay, so he gave us three descriptive or analytical terms. First one was sacred specialist. They are sacred specialist. Okay, sacred specialist, sacred geography, and sacred performances. Okay. So LP Vidyarthi says that sacred complex are places of ancient civilization where great tradition and little tradition elements come together and interact. These are places where people from different cultures, from all walks of life, from all strata of society, from rural background, urban background, from folk culture, all these people come together, and these sacred complexes are the place where the fusion or mixing of the great tradition and little tradition happens. So what is great tradition and what is little tradition? We already discussed in our previous topic, isn't it? Great tradition are the traditions which have been mentioned in the original religious epics. They have been considered as superior traditions because they have been mentioned in the religious texts. They have been followed by the elite people. They have been followed by the people throughout the length and breadth of a country. That is, they have a national character, and these people and these great traditions are properly organized. There is no sort of ambiguity whatsoever. So these are the great traditions. What are little traditions? Little traditions are the tradition of the rural people, folk people, and the peasant society. These traditions have nowhere been mentioned in any of the religious texts. These are just transmitted from one generation to another through oral repetition. Okay, and it is the allied people belonging to the great tradition who consider these little traditions as mere beliefs or superstitions which do not have any proper organization. Okay, so this is what little traditions are, and we also discussed about the examples for great tradition and little tradition. So you already have a very good idea about what great tradition is and what little tradition is. So LP Vidyarthi says that the sacred complexes are the centers of civilization where the great tradition and little tradition elements come together and interact with each other. There is a continuity, there is a compromise that is happening over here. So he explains sacred complex using these three analytical terms. First one is the sacred specialist. So what do I mean by a sacred specialist? Sacred specialists are not ordinary people just like you and me, right? So these people are priests. These people are specialized people who do pujas, who do sacrifices, who transmit religious knowledge, who preach about the religious texts like Ramayana, Mahabharata, and all. So if you visit any of these places like Kashi and all, you can see the priests over there. they will have an entire, different way they dress up, right? Say you can see people like this, they will have a tuft of hair in their head over here. You can find a small ponytail over here. Now, of course, it has become very popular for even, other people, to flaunt long hairs and, do all these styles. But traditionally, if you see, they have a distinctive lifestyle, okay? Be it in the dresses which they wear, be it in the food that they eat, or be it in the culture which they follow, the lifestyle which they follow, everything is entirely different from the common people, right? So they will be wearing a distinct attire. Just by looking at them, we can identify that these people are priests or these people are something sacred. They are not like ordinary people like us, isn't it? So the just by looking at them, you can find they will be wearing this, traditional attire of dhoti, and they will be wearing this rudraksh on their neck. They will have a tuft of hair on their head, and they'll be wearing earrings. And the main occupation, or the work which these people do is they officiate as temple priests, and these people also organize religious pilgrimage activities for people in villages. So you must have noticed that in villages and all, people won't be going on religious pilgrimage alone or only with their family. Groups of people, all the villagers together, when there is no, agricultural activity, all of them will pool some resources, they will pool in some money together, and they will set out to go for a religious pilgrimage. They will visit places like Kashi or, Rameshwar or wherever. They will go visit those places, they will rest for some time, and then they will come back. So it is these priests who organize such religious pilgrimage, and they preach the religious, they preach the religious texts, whatever is there in, in Ramayana, Mahabharata and all. Even, sometimes, it's very popular during this Dasara season. You can find the short-term courses on Ramayana, Mahabharata and all. You can, especially in Delhi, I have seen various posters on the street advertising 1 month course on Ramayana. Every day you have to just attend the 1 or 2 hours of class, and they will teach you Ramayana or Mahabharata within 1 month and all. So it is, these people who are transmitting the knowledge that is present in the ancient religious texts, and they officiate as temple priests. They perform various sacrifices, yagnas, homas, okay, and um, these people are also called as Gayaval Brahmins, right? So these Gayaval Brahmins, already I told you about this in previous topic when we were discussing the Rina, Pitra Rina, right? So what we do for our parents or ancestors who have died, so we worship the ancestral spirits by doing this puja, right? That is pindadan. So that is also done by these people. They make rice balls and decorate with flowers and other fruits, everything. They sit on the bank of some river, and they ask the names of the ancestors from the person who's conducting the puja, and they do recite the prayers, and they do that. So they do such kind of pindadan. Okay, they also do sacrifices, and they are very famously called as Gayaval Brahmins. Okay, so they do puja for ancestral spirits also. So this is their main function. So this is what he called as, these people are called as sacred specialist. Okay, so now you understood what is the meaning of sacred specialist. Next we shall see what is the meaning of sacred geography. Sacred geography. So the first analytical term which we understood was sacred specialist. The second analytical term is sacred geography. What is a sacred geography? So as I already told you, you would have definitely visited at least one of the religious pilgrimage place, whichever is nearest to you, isn't it? So yeah, I can give you the example of Tirupati Tirumala Devasthanam. So there, when you go there, you can see a hillock, right? There will be a hillock, there will be a forest surrounding the hillock, there will be rivers or water streams flowing, and there will be so many animals which are living in these forests. So just by going to that place, you can find that it is very much different from the rest of the places like cities or towns or other places, right? So they have a peculiar geography associated with that place, isn't it? Here also you can see, this is there is a river that is flowing over here. You can find so many ghats over here. This is the picture of Kashi. Okay, so I think it's Kashi. So here there is water that is flowing, and on the banks of the water throughout, even in you can find such banks and religious places of religious pilgrimage across wherever Ganga flows. Right, Ganga is very sacred according to Hindu mythology, and so across wherever, whichever place river Ganga flows, on its banks you can find so many places of religious pilgrimage, isn't it? So you can find Kashi, Rishikesh, everything, Haridwar, right? So from the where Ganga enters the foothills, it gets down from the foothills and enters the plains, is Rishikesh, right? So prior to that, we have Kedarnath, Badrinath. After that, when it enters the plains, we have Rishikesh. So right from Rishikesh, it moves up to Haridwar and goes on like that. So throughout the bank of river Ganges, you can find so many places, so many temples and places of religious pilgrimage. So like this, you can find that these places have a peculiar geography. They will have river, they will have ghats on the side. You can find so many temples over here. You can find people coming here, from all throughout the country, and they'll be offering puja to the Ganges, and also for other worship will be happening. So this is very different, just by looking at that place, you can find that it is very sacred, it is very traditional. These are ancient centers of civilization. These are not things which have, which have been created just now recently, right? So these are ancient centers of civilization where just by looking at this, you can understand it has a sacred geography. So this is what he described as sacred geography. Okay, so now we shall move on to the next descriptive term. The next descriptive term is sacred performances. So here you can see the picture of ancestral worship. That is the Pindadan which I was speaking about. You can see how they make the rice balls and they decorate it with flowers and everything, and they perform pujas to the ancestral spirits. So this is a sacred performance. Okay, so by looking at this, you can understand it's very sacred. It is traditional, and they are performing something very special, right? So these are the three analytical terms. That is sacred performance, sacred geography, sacred performance, and sacred specialist. So you understood what's the meaning of sacred specialist, and next we saw the picture of a sacred geography. So you can see the sacred geography in any religious pilgrimage place, right? You can see it right from Manas Sarovar up to anywhere throughout the country, wherever you can find these ancient centers of civilization, which are places of religious pilgrimage. You can find the sacred geography. You can find the sacred performances happening. That is, they do Gaya Shraddha. This is called as Gaya Shraddha. Gaya Shraddha is nothing but worshipping of the ancestral spirits. So in some, some people even prefer to call it as Sarda and not as Shraddha. So both are the same. So Gaya Shraddha means worshipping the ancestral spirits. Worshipping of the ancestral spirits. So this is how they do that. Okay, I hope many of you all would have seen such activities happening, even when some relative expired or something. When you attend the pujas or the rituals that happen after 1 week or 15 days or something like that, you must have observed these kind of performances happening there. And even when you visit these places of pilgrimage, definitely you can see these activities going on over there. So what LP Vidyarthi says is the sacred geography, the sacred performances, and sacred practitioners or the sacred specialists. Both are the same. Sacred practitioners or the sacred performers, practitioners. Both are the same. When these three are when they are collectively conceived, then we understand what is the meaning of sacred complex. Okay, LP Vidyarthi says that in order to understand what is a sacred complex, we need to understand three important descriptive or analytical terms. One is sacred geography, another is sacred specialist, and another one is sacred performances. When all these three are conceived collectively, then you can understand what's the meaning of a sacred complex. So this sacred complex concept can be extended to any place of religious pilgrimage, and it is not limited to Bodh Gaya alone. It is just that LP Vidyarthi went over there, he studied that place over there, and he said, okay, this is how, if you understand these terms over there, then you can understand what sacred complex means. And so he wrote that in his book and he gave us this concept. Similarly, there are other people who studied other places of religious pilgrimage, and those places are also, you can see the concept of sacred complex there also. I will be giving you examples about that. Okay. So sacred complexes are places where there is a continuity, compromise and combination of great tradition and little tradition elements happening. Okay. Okay. So sacred complexes are places where there is a continuity, combination and compromise of little and great tradition elements. Okay. So sacred complexes are places where there is continuity, combination and compromise of the great tradition and little tradition elements happening. So I already told you again what is a great tradition and what is a little tradition. So these sacred complexes are places of ancient civilization where people belonging to all sorts of traditions and all sorts of culture coming together. That is, you can find people over there from all walks of life. People from rural areas, people from folk culture, people from urban areas, right? People belonging to different strata of society, people following different cultures, all of them come together over here in these places of civilization. So what happens here is these little tradition and greater tradition elements fuse and interchange and exchange with each other, right? So when we studied great tradition and little tradition, I told you that just because the little tradition elements and great tradition elements are moving towards each other, that does not mean they will lose their identity. They do not lose their self. Instead, there is always a fusion and interpenetration of traditions that is happening. So it is these sacred complex places which has helped that. It is these places of ancient civilization which facilitate the continuity, the combination and the compromise of the great and tradition elements. It is in these places that the little and great tradition elements fuse and mix with each other. So what happens? See, these places of sacred complex help in continuing the traditions. Say these places, your ancestors would have visited it, your great grandparents would have visited, then your parents, then you will visit it. And you know, this continues, this tradition of visiting these places will be carried out throughout your generations, isn't it? Irrespective of whether you are following little tradition or great tradition, across generations, across, lineages, all these people go together. It is a tradition to go and visit these places. So there is always a continuity of the great tradition and little tradition elements, which is happening here in these sacred complexes. Next, it also facilitates the combination. So I told you what will happen. People of little tradition elements will come there and people of great tradition will come there. So they try to exchange the traditions. There are few beliefs or few traditions which are followed by the little tradition which will be picked up by the greater tradition. and there will be few elements or beliefs or traits of the greater tradition which will be picked up by the little tradition. So there is always ongoing fusion and interpenetration and combination of the tradition which happens here at the sacred complex. Then further, they also compromise. See, sometimes some little tradition elements, people belonging to little tradition, they will give up some of their habits. Like, say, for example, in little tradition, you can find that sacrifice, animal sacrifice will be very common, right? So, whereas these people, after coming here and mingling and interaction with all these people, they might, to certain extent, give up the practice of animal sacrifice. They will pick up a new method of sacrificing other or new methods of doing sacrifices, or new methods of worship from the great tradition elements, isn't it? So there is, to a certain extent, compromise also happening. It is not always that only the little tradition will compromise. On both sides, be it great tradition or little tradition, you can find that they will pick up the traits of the other tradition, and and it will be continued across their generations. Okay, so in this sacred complex, you can find that there is always a continuity and combination and compromise of the great tradition and little tradition which is happening. That is why these centers of sacred complex are so important, because they are because they are facilitating the combination and coming together of the little tradition and great tradition. Is it seeming very complex? Not, right? It's very simple. Just try to understand what it is. And if you read the materials once, it will stick to your mind and you will never forget it again. So, is it so that only the places of sacred complex are benefiting, only the priests are benefiting, only the places of sacred complex are benefiting, or are they only the people who is benefiting from this? It is not true. So it is a mutual relationship between the people and the sacred complex. That is, both the people are getting benefited from the sacred complex, as well as the sacred complex is also getting benefited from the people who are visiting that. How is it so? See, you can find that whenever we go to any temples, you give offerings, okay, and there are people from across the globe who send loads and loads of money to all these places, because of which they improve the infrastructure of the temples, and they build much, shelters for people who come stay there. So even though the places of sacred complex are also progressing, they are also becoming more and more they are also becoming more and more wealthier, isn't it? So our Tirupati temple is the one of the second richest in the world, right? So it is a mutual relationship. At the same time, the sacred complex is also benefiting from the people, and people are also benefiting from these places. They go there, they worship, they feel a sense of happiness when they come back, right? So that is always a mutual relationship. Um, so I already told you that the concept of sacred complex is not restricted or limited only to Bodh Gaya. You can find sacred complexes throughout the country, and few of them have been studied by few other scholars also. So this is the which place is this? So this place is Chamundeshwari temple in Mysore, Karnataka. So this place was studied by Morabat Goswami. And this, I'm sure all of you know this. This is Lingaraj temple in Bhuvaneshwar, right? So Lingaraj temple in Bhuvaneshwar, and this the sacred complex here was studied by um, Mahapatra, and this is the Tarakeshwara temple in West Bengal. This was studied by Chakravarti. Okay, so this is the Tarakeshwara temple in West Bengal, which was studied by Chakravarti. The sacred complex here was studied by Chakravarti, and Mahopatra studied the Lingaraj temple in Bhuvaneshwar, Orissa. And then this is the very famous Chamundeshwari temple in Mysore, Karnataka, and that was studied by Morab and Goswami. Okay, so did you all understand what is the meaning of sacred complex? It's a very simple thing. The concept of sacred complex was given by L.P. Vidyarthi in his book, The Concept of the Ancient Concept of. I'm sorry, I'm really. Um, the sacred complex of Hindu Gaya. Okay, so the concept of sacred complex was given by L.P. Vidyarthi in his book, The Sacred Complex of Hindu Gaya. He says that these places are ancient centers of civilization where people from all walks of life and from different traditions and cultures and come together over here and interact. He said that these are the places where the little tradition and greater tradition elements combine, continue, and compromise with each other. He said that if you have to understand the concept of sacred complex, then you will have to understand what is the meaning of sacred geography, sacred specialist, and sacred performances. And when these three are conceived collectively, you can understand what is the meaning of sacred complex. And he also says that sacred complexes are also benefiting from the people who are visiting that. It's a very simple complex, isn't it? Very simple complex. Okay. So with this, we shall wind up today's session. We shall meet in our next lecture soon. Take care. Bye.